today's discussion is about in the competitive landscape, how can we deliver exceptional customer experiences that will be crucial to driving revenue, loyalty, and repeat business? And what are the new age tools of engagement that we can use to create a lasting impression for the consumer? To start, I'll just set the context and I'll share a story with permission. You know, this New Year I spent in Gujarat. And there's a village called Bhujodi, about 10 kilometers from Bhuj, where I went. And because I'm interested in textile, I went on an expedition with friend and family. And we stumbled upon this gentleman called Shyamji Bhai, right? And Shyamji Bhai is, to our pleasant surprise, well awarded. His father, his 5 brothers, and his son employ about 60 families from the village, और उस village में for doing dyeing and weaving of traditional Kutch textiles. और उस गांव में एक पत्ता नहीं हिलता है बिना श्याम जी भाई के. And when we entered the house, his father was there. Chulha pe he is making chapatis. His mother is all dressed up with the traditional jewelry and everything. His brothers are weaving charkha, and you can also go and spin some yarn on the charkha. There is indigo pits. There are pit looms where weavers are weaving, etc. It's as if it was some sort of a massive visual merchandising going on with everything right there. The family, the house, everything as great prop. And of course, then you go to the shop and buy products, right? And Shyamji very quickly added me on his Instagram, and we ended up buying very expensive shawls, which I don't need. And it made me wonder. And then there are cattle. तो वो तुरंत वो दूध गरम एकदम ताज़ा दूध का चाय पिला दिया उन्होंने. अरे चाय पीजिए, आपके बच्चे हैं ना, उनको दूध पिलाइए. All of that, right? And then, while I came out of this home or a shop, or whatever you can call it, I had to stop, have my Maggie and chai on a nukkad, and I couldn't help but ponder that what an immersive experience it was, right? And then it made me wonder that can we create, and I'm sure that such profound experience and connection, there are many, but we seldom find, right? And that's what brings me to our discussion today. And of course, because we don't live in Bhujodi, we live and we have large ambitions, and technology has a great role to play today in scaling businesses. So that's our discussion today. But before we get into, let me introduce our panelists. We have Puspen Maity, who is the CEO of TechnoSport. Puspen is an experienced professional who helped scale Myntra from its early days and went on to co-found Cultfit and Cultsport, and shaping India's leading fashion e-commerce platforms. With expertise in building businesses from scratch, he now leads efforts at TechnoSport to create India's very own sportswear super brand. So that's Pushpen, ladies and gentlemen. We have Saurabh, who is the MD of Latin Quarters, director and co-founder, women's wear Western brand. Saurabh did his bachelor's in business administration from Hofstra University, New York, and then worked in New York managing an independent chain of pharmacies before finding his love for apparel and starting Latin Quarters. So that's Saurabh. Then we have Soumava Naskar. He loves rock and roll. His favorite band is Guns N' Roses, and he loves Welcome to the Jungle song, right, Som? And Som is the managing director of Hummel India and for India and Southeast Asia, leading the brand strategy growth in these emerging markets with a passion for delivering impactful customer experiences. He champions Humble's values of innovation, sustainability, and social responsibility. Soumava is committed to empowering people through sport and fashion, fostering connection, and driving positive change. That's Soumava, ladies and gentlemen. And then we have Ayush Bansal, very sharply dressed. Ayush is director at Liberty Group. Ayush Bansal, director at Liberty Group, drives innovation and growth for iconic footwear brand. With expertise in e-commerce, modern trade, and OEM partnerships, he has expanded Liberty's market presence significantly. His focus on digital transformation, D2C models, and consumer insights keeps the brand competitive and industry leading. So that's our panel, ladies and gentlemen. A big round of applause for the panelists, please. So that'll take us to the first question. And if I can nudge Som to start with the first question, please. Uh, Som, could you please share some of the new age, engagement, new age tools of engagement or storytelling that brands can do to make customers keep coming back, particularly in today's crowded market, and particularly because at Hummel, I know that you work with a lot of sports teams. So how do you ensure that the whole journey of product creation to the customer stays very, very authentic?
So I think when you work with clubs or team sports, irrespective of any particular domain, you cannot fake it. Like you have to be part of the tribe to be relevant to the consumer base. It's not only just creating a jersey, but actually, like getting the values of that particular club. I'll talk about two instances. We get a club called Ladakh FC, One Ladakh FC. They play in a stadium in Leh. That's around, I think, 9,000 feet above the ground. And the entire stadium is sustainable. So their entire jersey and their entire playing gear that we make is sustainable. Like that's not something that we can even think of not doing. Now, the problem is in India is when you work with such kind of clubs or communities, probably India is still a very cricket heavy consumer base. Like where do we find the home for such merchandise? You'd be surprised to know that probably in India we'd have sold maybe 500 jerseys of them. We sold around 10,000 jerseys for them in the European market, where people embrace the Ladakh story. I'll talk about another very interesting story that we recently experienced with Revenant. So we are one of the, I think, prominent brands into the esports scenario globally. We work with one of the top clubs across the space, and in India we work with Revenant. So we had a special BGMI jersey for them. Now I'm a very old school, I would say, PlayStation kind of a gamer, but this is a completely new age of gaming. And we were creating jerseys for them, and we were talking about the jersey in terms of how it should happen and everything. Zero wastage is a very, very important parameter to the young age gamers or consumers. They don't like wastage. We created a digital jersey. We put it up. It went live. The gamer community, they actually just started talking about it. We had 5,000 orders, prepaid. We get the order. We make it. We ship it out in 2 days. This is unbelievable. I also have been part of the e-commerce journey in India for some time now. Unbelievable. Zero wastage in e-commerce. I think this is the new game that will slowly start happening. And I think being very true to the consumer base, creating something that fixes with the right tribe movement, that is very, very relevant. That is very, very critical, I guess. You cannot fake it to this particular consumer base. So, yeah.
That's amazing, Som. That takes me to Saurabh, and Som spoke about certain challenges and then how did they overcome those challenges, and it took a lot of belief to do that. However, I think, Saurabh, if you can talk about some of the biggest challenges that you think that fashion brands face in delivering exceptional customer experiences today, and how can we leverage tech to drive those solutions, loyalty, and customer retention, and particularly if you can share some examples from Latin quarters, that'll help us a lot.
Sure. If I talk about our experience, I think the biggest challenge that we have faced is delivering, obviously we're in fashion, so delivering relevant product. India obviously is very diverse. It's many countries within one country. And because we are geographically spread out, how do we deliver product that is relevant to somebody who's sitting in, let's say, Chennai, for example? And while at the same time being relevant to somebody who's in a completely different, the climates are different, the festivals are different, the kind of even shades of skins are different. So I think the biggest challenge for us is to deliver relevant product across the year. And like Puspen mentioned, it's a very personalized thing. Fashion is very personal. How you express your sense of style is different, everywhere. So for us, we feel like that's the biggest challenge in terms of, and that's where I think the tech comes in, right? So, in order to deliver that experience to the customer, you have to make sure that you're planning correctly, using the correct tools to forecast, using the correct tools to kind of allocate the product at the right time. As an example, like Pujo in the East. So what is selling in Pujo during Pujo time is completely different from what the rest of the country, because obviously they're in a festive mood, it's a festive spirit. The product that they're looking for is completely different at that particular point of time. Or an extreme example would be like winter wear during the north. So if you're not doing winter, you're pretty much not relevant in the north, at least during the winter months. So I think to leverage tech to kind of deliver that experience across the country, I think that would probably be the biggest challenge. And I think we rely a lot on historical data. We rely a lot on that data and the tools to kind of correctly, predict the product part of it. Also, in terms of if I talk about loyalty, you mentioned. So yes, we are doing the regular stuff, which I think pretty much today all the brands are doing in terms of your the earning and burning of points, the kind of interaction, kind of personalizing the kind of messages and the right time. But I think we need to go beyond that. I think loyalty now has moved beyond your basic stuff. I think now it's more about the community that you're building around your brand. It's not just transactional in terms of the product that you're buying and how often you're coming to the store and why somebody hasn't visited in 6 months and now we need to reach out and make sure that they're. I think it's more about building a story around the brand where there's a community which is not just transactional, which is not just buying and selling of the product. Like a good example would be, obviously, we would love to kind of replicate that type of success, but something like what Harley does. There's a whole community around that biking and everybody gets together on Sunday mornings and puts on their gear and goes for a ride, or something like I saw last year Lululemon does, like yoga classes. So there's a whole, there's nothing about buy our product. It's more about what kind of experience you're able to deliver through that community building around the brand. And I think that's where, obviously we see all this tech around us and there's some great products out there which people are selling and we get very excited to see all that. And then we have to kind of rein in our excitement and go back to the basics and say, okay, what is the problem that this tech is able to solve for you? It's obviously a means to an end. It's a tool. It's not an end in itself. So first identify what problem this tech is going to solve for you. And I think sticking to the basics of retail, yes, things have changed a lot, but I think it's one of those businesses where you go back to the basics and you're able to deliver value, and I think that's what it's all about.
That's great. That's great, Saurabh. And it's quite amazing, Saurabh, that you did pharmacy and then you talk about Harley and then you sell Western women's wear. So that's amazing diversity right there, right?
Varied interests, yes.
That's amazing. No, that's great. So that brings me to the next question, and I think Puspen, you'll be absolutely the right person to answer that. That, in your opinion, how has the definition first of exceptional customer experience evolved? Right from the old days of proximity retailing when Thela will come home and then you'll buy things, go on to various evolution of retail that has happened, and particularly in the fashion industry, and how brands can bridge the gap between the whole dichotomy of physical and digital worlds. And I'll sit there.
Yeah. So I think very interesting question, right? So at least in my lifetime, I have seen retail, particularly fashion, has evolved quite a bit, right? If I have to, take it in 4 parts, till 1995, most of us used to stitch our clothes going to a local, tailor, right? And then 95 onwards, Arvind Madura came, then the branded culture came, right? And that continued till early 2000. We started seeing the mall culture getting developed all over the country, right? And then within in the next 5-7 years, 2010-11 e-commerce came, right? That stayed maybe 8-10 years, 2020 onward, then the quick commerce came, right? India is the only country in the world where the consumer preference as well as retail scenario evolved so quickly, so fast, right? It changes every 10 years, right? Now everyone is talking about quick commerce. Maybe another 5-7 years, you'll see something, some different way of, fashion is sort of being sold in the country today, right? So that's very interesting thing, right? When you talk about seamless, right? Across channel, how do you stay relevant, right? That's very, very important. And if you see, none of them discontinued, right? I mean, branded retail, mall, e-commerce, quick commerce, everybody coexists today, right? It's not that, at the cost of one another, right? So staying relevant to that journey, I think extremely very, very important for a brand. I can give you one of the example because of my background, because I was part of a large e-commerce company in fashion in a very, very early days, 2010-11. And I went to a German brand and an American brand in sportswear space because we were predominantly selling sportswear those days, right? Nobody used to buy anything online. So we thought selling shoes will be easier, right? And we went to the American brand, and India mein jute kaun kharidta hai online mein, right? I will not give you inventory. And after a lot of, this thing, they gave us some inventory. Then the other German brand, they could visualize that something is changing, right? Something is coming up really big, right? The organization was so supportive. I think they created a different org structure in those early days purely for e-commerce, right? 10 years down the line, the other brand became #1 sportswear brand in the country and heavily leveraging on e-commerce, right? So I think that's a journey I think, all the brands has to look at, right? So the seamless experience across channel is very important. The other part of the experience bit, I just want to add, I think, it's not just being present in that particular channel or diversifying the channel, but experience, if I have to, look at the anatomy of experience, consumer experience, there are 4 parts to it, right? One is product, second is brand, third is pricing, fourth is, your service, how the way you treat the consumer, right? I think it starts with product, right? Sometimes we keep the product aside and say कि बाकी सब कुछ कर लेंगे तो experience अच्छा हो जाएगा. Great product is a great experience, right? I think it should start from there. Lot of brands I keep interacting today in D2C space, right? The focus is more on marketing, customer acquisition, growing up, scale, etc. Great thing, right? But I think having a great product is the first thing to sort of, it starts with that consumer experience. Of course, then brand comes, what is your brand positioning, etc. I don't want to get to the details. Somebody says I'm sustainable, some says I'm honest, somebody will say, I'll be faster, I'll give you, more options, etc. Somebody says, and I am, belong to this kind of, background, etc. But that's a brand positioning. Pricing, yes, very important. I mean, there are times, when brands used to differentiate the pricing between offline, online, quick commerce, this and that, but I think that time has gone, right? I mean, a brand cannot have a different profile across. And those who chose consciously to have different profile, we have seen how they struggled, right, to bring that synergy. There's a lot of conflict between channel, right? And last and most important thing, I think, somebody from the Agio team asked this question, personalization, right? I think for a brand, personalization is very, very important. You touched upon, but I think on the digital space also, you can do a lot of personalization. There's a bad personalization we talked about, but there's a good personalization. Just imagine you're walking into a Shoppers Stop store or a Benetton store, and the store reorients itself, a physical store, just imagine, hypothetically, right? Reorients itself the way you are looking for things, your preference, your taste, your color, right? And that you can do it digitally, right? For a brand also, it's not only just platform can do personalization, but also brand also you need to think, those are the things. There are a lot of things we can talk. I think the time is short, but I think it is absolutely, important that while you present across the platform, but also how do you bring in each and every touch point a great superior customer experience through a combination of these are 3-4 things, I think very, very important. Yeah.
Great, Puspen. That was, can you hear me? Yeah. That was very insightful, and that has really given me a lot of thoughts for many questions, if time permits. Otherwise, we can do it over a coffee. But that's amazing. I'll like to take the next question to you, Ayush. Ayush, we live in an ever-changing world, and as Pushpa was saying, that the world today is on a treadmill, right? And change management within the company, because I know for a fact that you have led a lot of new processes, a lot of changes in Liberty, and it is your effort that Liberty continues to connect with the younger consumer. How important it is for the fashion brands, from your perspective, is to invest in customer service training and internal culture to support their ever-evolving customer experience goals.
Thanks. That's quite a very insightful question, I must say. you know, we have identified skills in our organization into two categories. One is a core skill, and one is an emerging skill. And customer experience, customer service is something that we have pointed out as part of the core skill, which requires a lot of investment of time and money, so that our experience of a customer in various formats that we reach to them. It may be a distribution-based model, it may be a retail, or it may be a digital D2C website or any marketplace. We try to give a similar experience, and that requires a lot of training from our CRM team in the back end, who is a physical person handling calls, to the person handling a customer at the front end. Also, I would like to press upon is the culture of serving a customer, which is at the front end, versus that attitude of service and customer first, comes in also in the back end team, because that culture takes much longer to build, but it's more important to have that culture also built alongside the skill that you're developing, so that it has a longer term impact. I think this is what we are kind of working towards enhancing in terms of our 450 plus outlets that we have today across India in different regions, focusing on how we can give personal recommendation, how we do it on our D2C website. How can our shopkeeper or the salesman give that recommendation and do it better, because we also want to promote people going to our stores, because the AOV is higher, the repeats are higher on the retail, because it's around that area which they are servicing. So things like this is something, obviously when you go to a D2C website, there are tools to do it, but we should not forget that at the retail, we need to have training to be given to those team members. For example, you create great infographics to sell a product online, highlighting the USPs, but you cannot have the retailer or the salesman talk a different language. But he has to be in sync with your infographics online and your videos to what he's speaking offline. And we see a lot of shifts happening from customers visiting the product at the retail and then buying it online, and otherwise also. So that synergy was very difficult to achieve, because we have franchisees, we have company-owned COCOs. It was difficult to achieve, but we've able to arrive at a model where everybody's working kind of to push the product out.
That's great. Also, Ayush, it's very interesting because most of us grapple with this problem because we operate in multiple channels, as you said, right? You have large format department store, you have multi-brand outlets, you have online, you have retail, and the calendars are also very different. Lead times are different. But this is something that you very interestingly touched upon, that consistency of experience is very, very critical for consumer. Can you also share one of the few challenges that you would have faced to ensure that there was consistency across all channels?
So I think one of the bigger challenges is definitely lack of will to train. A lot of times it's a boring job to do, and it requires a lot of money investment to be done as well. So we always thought that that is something that we need to keep continuously doing it. That was one of the areas I felt a lot of other brands are lacking. For us also, it's an ongoing process, but we still need to go there much more further.
Sure. So eventually it boils down to niyat, intent, and the will. That's great. So how are we doing on time? Okay, great. We are open to questions now. If there is any question from the audience, we'll take that.
I just want to add something to
Yes,
this channel experience, right?
Yes.
And it's a bit philosophical, right? I'm not here recommending any tools, etc. But I think a brand is the connection between brand and the consumer is like connection of God and the person who is worshipping, right? No matter if worship at home or you go to a temple, right? Your spiritual experience doesn't change, right? But once in a while you would like to go to temple, right? You still have the option to worship at home. But same thing is, a brand, right? You can always order it from quick commerce, from online, or any other marketplaces. But at the same time, once in a while, you would like to visit the store, because that's where you feel the brand in real avatar, right? So I think as long as we understand this core philosophy, I think, if you design everything around that, right? I think, there is a long way we can take the brand ahead.
Som, this is for you. Thank you for the fantastic Ladakh story. I'm also involved with a little bit of women's football in Bangalore, and I know for a fact that you guys have supported a club called Misaka. And the women from there always wear Hummel shirts even now, right? So my fundamental question to you is, how do you leverage the longevity of these affiliations and relationships?
Okay, so as I told you, like if when you work with clubs or any sports, and I think any performing, teams, you cannot fake it. We are invested. When we talk to them, when we sign contracts, or when we go into this kind of discussions, the idea is not to throw a certain bit of money and say this is just like a one-time transaction. No, we do not do that. Like category, we do not do that. We step away from all such sponsorship-led discussions. We try to understand the vision of the club. So Misaka is like a wonderful story. When we work with them, the idea is that we take their story out to all the channels that no other probably brand would be willing to do. I would not say they're not capable of. There's a big difference. So, if you can actually find a Misaka jersey in UK online, you can actually probably, too soon to say, but we are trying that there would be some, like Singapore sports store, which will start hosting, like Indian club jerseys. Why are we doing it? Is there a lot of money? No, probably not. Right now, there is not. But we are invested in this. Our whole philosophy is change the world to sport. How do you do that? By making people play sport? No. By making people believe that the stories are connected. Like whether someone is playing a football in Europe or in Kerala or like any part of the world, the players' emotion are the same. And that is what connects to the consumers. And that is, as long as we are true to that spirit, we succeed. The moment we try to fake it, we try to do anything which is out of the ordinary, which is not real, this particular consumer base, which are very young, which are very, very, I would say, empowered, knowledgeable, they sense it out and they block you. So my only advice to anyone getting into this space, don't try to fake it. They're much smarter than, like us, who are the brand custodians. Yeah.
Thank you. And you must be very proud because you got the arrows tattooed on your hand.
Thank you very much. Our time's up. Thank you. And we do hope that you had a lot of insights to take home. Thank you very much.